This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. I always like to bring in guests. The last couple of weeks, I haven't been able to bring in guests because it's just hard to work out these schedules, especially during the holidays. But today, I have a guest here for the Jacksonville Jaguars, UCF Jaguar. Go check out his YouTube channel. He comes highly recommended, has great content, been doing it for a little while there. How you feeling this week? I know it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride, right? Coming off of Monday Night Football and then having to deal with the whole Trevor Lawrence, like, is he going to be hurt? What's this whole thing going to be? So where are you guys at after all of that?
You know, it's funny. We're in a weird spot right now because, you know, when the Jaguars on Monday Night Football, when Trevor Lawrence went down, you know, a lot of us weren't even thinking, okay, let's win this game. You know, let's do a CJ Beathard comeback. We're all like, is Trevor Lawrence done and is our season over? And of course, the Jaguars dropped that one in overtime. And then, you know, this whole entire week we've been questionable about how is Trevor going to do? You know, is he going to come back? Like, how long is he out for? And then yesterday we actually saw him walk up to the podium, which is like, oh, he's not in like a boot or anything. So he's looking pretty good. And then today there's videos of him at practice, like doing 3-step drops and, you know, kind of, you know, doing the play actions and rolling out. So it's like this dude is really running on this ankle 3 weeks after it looked like an absolute travesty happened and he was going to be out for, you know, 4 weeks or so. So right now, you know, I think a lot of us are probably thinking that Trevor Lawrence plays on Sunday. So now we're kind of ready to start looking at the Browns and start scheming up how we're going to win this game when, you know, the previewing didn't really start, I think, until today. And now we're kind of looking forward to this matchup.
It's funny. The same thing happened with Browns fans and Myles Garrett a couple of weeks ago because he was like in a sling. And I thought the reaction was kind of like crazy because everybody's like, he's out for the year, this and that. I'm like, Myles Garrett has flipped the car over and played like a week later. Like, I'm pretty sure he's going to be fine. And he's not even on the injury report anymore.
Like, yeah. These guys are freak athletes. These guys are freaks, man. Especially
guys like Myles, guys like Trevor who go #1 overall because there's literally nothing like them in their draft class or even around them. Like Myles and Trevor have that in common where they were the #1 overall pick years before that pick was made. Just because everybody looked at that goes, yeah, once that guy's eligible, he's going #1 overall. So those are just different guys, especially like when they're built crazy like that. But one of the most interesting things I've seen about the Jacksonville Jaguars, they are a below average home team, but undefeated on the road. Like, what's going on with that? It's interesting because the Browns are a really good home team. They're awful on the road, especially like defensively. The defense just falls off a cliff on the road. What do you think is going into that? Do you think it's just coincidence? Do you think it's quality of opponent at home? Like, what do you think is factored into that?
Dude, I have no idea. It really doesn't make any sense. And it was kind of the reverse last year. The Jaguars were good at home, weren't able to win as well in away games. But I mean, if you look at it, you know, if you go to CBS and pull up the Jaguars away, it shows that, or at home, it shows that we're 3-4. But one of those home games is in London, so we're actually 2-4 away from or inside of Jacksonville right now. It's just, I mean, there's been tough opponents. I mean, the 49ers are playing like the best team in the NFL right now. You had the Texans that kind of snuck up on you when, you know, week 3 they were 0-2. We thought they were no good. Then they kind of had their coming out party, and you know, we've just, I don't know. And you play the Chiefs too; they're a good team. It's and the Bengals, you know, they smacked us around. And let's be real, I don't know if that team looks that much different on Monday night with Jake Browning than if they did with Joe Burrow. The guy just played lights out. I don't know what goes into it. It's, you know, they came up, I think at the end of the day, they were just out-coached, and the players just didn't execute whatever game plan there was. But, you know, Evan Ingram said a few weeks ago that, like, the Jaguars play their best when their backs are against the wall. And I don't know if something goes into the fact that when the Jaguars were, you know, 1-2, they had a 2-game losing streak. They flew over to London. And then Christian Kirk kind of made the statement that, you know, this will be a good way for us to, you know, kind of bond and come together. So I don't know if there's the simple fact of like having the team like get on an airplane, stay in a hotel, play in a different atmosphere rather than waking up in their own bed and then driving over to the stadium, that morning. I don't know if something different goes into it. It's something that the football analytics or whatever kind of people, experts in this category, they should look at and say, do we need to like put this team in a hotel the night before and maybe put them up in a plane, fly around for a couple hours and land back in Jacksonville? I don't know, but like there needs to be some research done here and figuring out like why the Jaguars just aren't showing up at home.
So when you look at your Jaguars team, you look at the Browns team, I think the matchup that I'm looking forward to, or at least I think is going to really decide the game, is that Browns defensive line versus that Jaguars offensive line, right? If you're familiar with the Browns, you know that the Browns pretty much everything comes from that interior, from that defensive line, right? If they're able to get pressure with that 4, the defense is going to be rolling. The offense will be enough as long as they're not a complete disaster there. They can beat good teams if that is just working right for them. If it doesn't, it looks a lot like LA, looks a lot like Denver, looks a lot like when they gave up 39 points to the Colts. Tackling starts to falter. You start to get run plays ran on you. That's where the Browns match up there. With your Jaguars team, how do you feel about their offensive line, given that they didn't have the greatest performance last week? Is that kind of just who they've been, or was that just a bad game or a bad showing from those guys?
I'll be honest, I don't feel great about it. I mean, the first couple of months of the season, the offense was kind of moving slow, but I said, you know what, like it'll be fine. Like it's fine in September and October. Just figure out ways to win, clean it up in November, December, so you can come into January, with the offense that's kind of ready to go. But the Jaguars on the offensive line, just the whole entire season, they just haven't been able to get any push and open up holes in the run game. So after 3.5 months of playing football, you kind of at this point just have to accept the fact that they're just not very good, and especially in the run blocking category where Travis Etienne he isn't running the same way he was, and he is dealing with a little bit of injury, as is a lot of guys on our roster. And while the passing has been pretty good with Trevor Lawrence just being able to get rid of the ball so well, it's just worrisome right now because without having a run game, Trevor Lawrence has been able to really bail us out of games and really just put these defenses and defensive backs on their heels to where they can't just load up the box on us, but with the scare of Trevor Lawrence potentially being out or being like limited in his play, it does scare me because like, look, if there's no pass game with a different quarterback, then and there's already no run game, like what the heck is our offense going to look like? Can we even put up points, or are we going to look like the New York Jets this Sunday? It's worrisome. So especially in this environment, and the Jaguars defensive line or offensive line got completely dominated by the San Francisco 49ers. And with this matchup against the Browns, y'all stack up right there with the 49ers on that end. So it's definitely worrisome. And the offensive coaching staff with OC Press Taylor, they're gonna have to figure something out to kind of figure out a way to get some push and get some give against the Browns defensive line.
Yeah, it's just been such an interesting season for this Browns team, right? Because sometimes they'll look like the best defense on earth, and then other times you're left wanting. But I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we just got nothing going offensively. When you look at areas for the Jaguars to kind of attack, what do you think that path of victory looks like for Jacksonville? What kind of game do you think they need to play, or what kind of game do you think they need to dictate in order to win this game?
Well, the thing with the Jaguars is like the defense doesn't have like all these superstars on it, but they've been able to play really disciplined in the game plan. And I think the main thing that they've been doing, which they didn't do on Monday night, is they've been really good at stopping the run. And they've been able to stop the run, and they've been able to stifle it to where, the offenses have been kind of forced to get into like 3rd and long situations, and they pass it, and then there just hasn't been much going there. So, and then against the Browns, they just weren't able to stop the run, or not against the Bengals, I should say. They weren't able to stop the run. They were running for 5 yards a pop. And then, Jay Browning was set up in these like 3rd and 2 situations, and he was just able to easily get completion. So the Jaguars absolutely need to be able to, stop the run. And look, that game went into overtime, but the reason why is because the Jaguars offense, with Trevor Lawrence, they were just able to, when they scored a touchdown, we scored a touchdown. I think it was the most ties of any NFL game this season, that Monday Night Football game. So yeah, if there's any way the Jaguars can attack the Browns, it's just, get a stop, like stop their running backs, like make sure they don't get any, running yards on you. And then, I think if Trevor Lawrence does play, the passing game is going to be able to get going. Not so sure right now what the weather forecast is going to be. Of course, right now it's at least when you look at Florida, like 3 days is too early to look at it because like weather changes so much over here. But yeah, it'll be a big decider there. So yeah, we got to be able to stop the Browns running attack.
Yeah, the one thing Florida and Northeast Ohio have in common is that the weather reports don't mean nothing.
Even hours before don't mean nothing.
Well, because the Browns played it with their stadium on that lake too, and you know how that waterfront weather can be at times. It can just change like on a dime. So yeah, you sometimes there was one game this year. I think it was the Cincinnati game, the opener. It only rained within like the radius of the stadium itself. Like if you were 5 feet out the stadium, it wasn't raining. But like, yeah, it was one of those like weird moments there. But that's just Cleveland weather for you.
Water too. So like, I mean, if you just if you're like 30 minutes inland, the weather is so much different than when you drive over there and you're right on the water like that with the elevated stadium up there. Like, yeah, it's every time when you're on the water like that, it definitely changes stuff.
Every time I go to Cleveland with somebody who's never been there before and I tell them about weather and they're like, it's like 60 degrees. I bring them to the lakefront so they can see what we mean by like, hey, you got to know what that wind chill is.
Yeah. You don't know what wind chill is, man. The
weather you see means nothing.
You can bundle up, but once that wind comes in, man, that's the game changer.
Ooh, and then you sit in that stadium so your body's not producing any heat and then you're touching water. You're just getting cold. I'm like, nah, you got to, whatever the temperature is, the stadium will feel like 30 degrees less than that. Or 30 degrees more than that. Like I know that struggle in Florida where it's like, hey, it's too hot to go to the game. That's why they got a pool out there.
Right now is the perfect time though, man. We didn't have this game in Jacksonville because December right now, man, it's like 68 degrees out here right now. It's perfect. But in September, it is brutal down here.
Whew. That's why when I hear people make those jokes about like Florida sports fans, I'm always like, hey, I don't think y'all understand. Heat is inclement weather. Like in the South. Like sometimes it's just too hot. Especially like in the Southeast, it's just too hot to be out there going to these games and then the lines are long. But back to the focus on the game again. One of the things that I find interesting whenever I do one of these interviews is there's always players that slip the national radar or slip kind of the general conversation about your team, even with very informed fans, right? Like there are players that I know about as a Browns fan that I have a higher opinion on because I watch them every week versus, somebody on a random team, right? Like pretty sure Martin Emerson's somebody that's like kind of, you think of him as like a third corner, but a lot of people in Cleveland think that's probably the second best corner on the team. There's examples like that on every team. Who are the guys like that for Jacksonville where you're like, hey, these guys don't really get talked about that much? Like, I think Josh Allen was somebody who nobody knew he had 13 and a half sacks until like that graphic popped up. And you're like, oh, wow, he's having a pretty good season. He's still pretty good there. But like, who are those guys for Jacksonville where you're like, hey, you might not know about these guys because they're not the guys who get a ton of love, but they're very important to what we try to do here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Josh Allen is he's a household name. Everyone kind of knows him with being a first round pick and everything. And he's having the best year of his career so far. But, one guy I go to is probably Darius Williams. He's a cornerback. The Jaguars got him a couple years ago from the Los Angeles Rams. Coming off of the Super Bowl, he actually came back to Jacksonville, which is he actually went to high school back in Jacksonville, grew up in Jacksonville. So he took kind of a, hometown discount. But, he's been playing like pretty consistently rated. I'm not sure about the last few weeks, but for a while there as like top 5, top 10 cornerback in the NFL with some of his like PFF grades and everything. And, lately with the cornerback one, Tyson Campbell, he's been dealing with some injuries and he probably had his worst game as a pro on Sunday. So Darius Williams, he had a pretty good streak. I think he had like a 3-game interception streak at one point in the middle of the year. So he's a player that means a lot to our defense, especially with the nickel cornerback suffering concussion. on Monday, and Tyson Campbell potentially being out. Who knows if he's going to be out? And he's been really pivotal to the team because he's been available and healthy. On the offensive side, I would probably, we all play fantasy, so we know who the different guys are. But with Christian Kirk going down, a guy to probably look out for is Parker Washington from Penn State. He was a 5th-round pick in this last draft, and he went in and filled in really nice for Christian Kirk. Had like 6 receptions, I think 70-something yards and a touchdown, and that touchdown was a really, really nice catch. It wasn't like he was, open in the corner of the end zone on a fade. It was like heavily contested. He had to double clutch it, and he made a crucial touchdown in the back of the end zone. So I almost wonder if he's a guy that kind of emerges with Christian Kirk being out. Maybe some focuses more so shifted at Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones and Evan Ingram, where maybe this guy coming out of the slot might be able to get some action this game, because Kirk, he's going to be missed. He was definitely by far most reliable receiver, because Calvin Ridley has been dealing with some big time drops and big time situations, unfortunately. So yeah, Parker Washington might be a guy to look out for this game.
On the flip side of that, every team has those players that kind of co-spy on reputation, because people just look by, like, they see the big name and go, okay, that guy's still good, right? Because he was once good. I think Za'Darius has kind of been that for Cleveland. At times, Wyatt Teller has been kind of along that path there. Are there those bigger name guys there that you're like, they might not be terrible, but they aren't what you would expect with the cachet that name brings for the Jaguars? Is there anybody that kind of fits that description?
Well, man, like I just kind of mentioned him, like Calvin Ridley, and like Calvin Ridley. It's not like he'll get like a 1st and 10 drop that will make it a 2nd and 5. It's like these big time plays. Like he dropped a pair of touchdowns in each of the Texans games that were just right in his hands. Touchdowns that he just didn't come down with, and they were just crucial moments, in these games. And he even had one last game where Trevor Lawrence made a miraculous escape from a pocket on 3rd down, throws it up, and he like drops it, and it's like, dude, like you're supposed to be our wide receiver number 1. And while the stats, he may put up pretty stats and everything, in some of the games this year, but what's hiding from those is like some of these drops that he's had has been complete game changers. And you never know if he catches the one in week 3 against Houston, maybe they win that game. If he catches the one against the Bengals, maybe they win that game. You never really know the kind of impact that these drops have later in the games. But when you're 2 and knows when he drops back, he can chuck it up Tyreek Hill and he's going to come down with it. Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs, Jalen Hurts with AJ Brown. Like you have these guys, and right now Trevor Lawrence wants that to be Calvin Ridley, but he's just not making it happen. So that's one there. Maybe defensively, I would maybe say there's not many like huge household names on the Jaguars defense, but maybe just Trayvon Walker. I mean, he is he's a number 1 pick in 2022, and he's been up and down. There's some weeks where he has good games, and then some weeks where it's just not. But at the end of the day, this guy was the number 1 overall pick. The Jaguars selected him, saying that out of every player in this draft, this guy is going to be the best player out there. And it's just, I was hoping that this offseason he would develop all these pass rushing moves, but he just unfortunately hasn't. So that I think that just kind of is what it is. Of course, it's still early in his career, but for now, it's a little bit disappointing.
All right. And I think the last thing I'll ask you before we get out of here, one player on each team that you worry about or are interested in being a game breaker, and we have to take out Trevor Lawrence and Myles Garrett, because I feel like that would be the obvious answers for both sides here.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I would say, Amari Cooper, great receiver, and he's healthy right now, right?
He's in concussion protocol, and he didn't practice yet, so he might not play. I think he's likely not going to play.
See, I had no idea that he even got hurt. I feel like this guy is just always dinged up. I never know what's going on with him.
Yeah, that's the thing with him. He's always dinged up, but he plays. And this is one of those ones where it's like his concussion protocol is kind of out of his hands.
Yeah. And he made a pretty sweet grab last game I saw. But yeah, he's with the Jaguars. It's just some of their top receivers. It feels like their wide receiver ones tend to go off against us, and Amari Cooper would be a guy that I would definitely worry about. But yeah, just man, on the defense, probably maybe Ward, the cornerback on the outside, just because I just don't know if in these games, like Trevor Lawrence has tried to go deep to like Ridley, but kind of throw out one of these 50-50 balls. And if it's good coverage, like Stingley's able to break it up against Ridley and just these different cornerback ones. Last game, Mike Hilton was able to get in against us. So yeah, like I just fear that the top end cornerbacks just aren't able to fill in well when it comes to these top end cornerbacks are just able to cover our receivers so well, where it's hard for us to get separation at times, and that's what I tend to get nervous about.
Derek Stingley been playing some football these last couple of weeks. I tell you, that game he had last week was insane.
Yeah,
that absurd, two of the most absurd interceptions you will ever see. Google those. If you haven't seen them, Google them Derek Stingley interceptions. I know everybody's talking about Sauce and how that was a better pick than him. Derek Stingley, he's got something to say.
Well, now Derek Stingley's actually like healthy because he's been dealing with all these injury issues. Now he's like playing a bunch of games healthy, and man, that guy is nasty. That guy is nasty.
People forget he was the best player in the country defensively as a 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, ooh.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's been playing some good football. For me, when I look at Jacksonville, look, the Browns just have not stopped the run. And it's interesting here you say, like, we cannot run the ball. So, like, it's kind of one of those, which one's going to break? But we've just given up some pretty pitiful rushing performances, even at home when we were playing well. Yeah. And I'm like, Travis Etienne is big. He runs hard. That's the kind of guy that breaks like a tackle at the line of scrimmage, and then it's just left to our DBs. And the thing with the Browns is they are big up front, but they're small everywhere else because they want to be quick, right? But JOK, not the biggest linebacker. They don't run big linebackers out there. They also run Grant Delpit a lot as a linebacker. He's a really good player, but you're smaller there, which means those bigger guys who break a couple tackles, they tend to give us issues, especially when they run up the middle on this Browns defensive line because of the wide 9 front. And I think Doug, having familiarity with Jim Schwartz, knows that he's going to run that thing up the middle a ton, especially with Trevor being hurt. So I do worry about like us letting the Jaguars have a big rushing game here, especially on that front. On the Jaguars defensive side, I mean, like Josh Allen is a great candidate to put here, where it's like we have a third string tackle in Garrett Christian. He's been fine. But the thing I think is going to go well for the Browns is that whether it's Joe Flacco or DTR that plays this week, both those quarterbacks have ridiculously quick time to throws. Like they just get rid of that ball super quick, and that can negate a lot of the pass rush. I actually kind of worry more about the impact of some of these corners that Jacksonville has, because I think Joe Flacco is going to try to take them deep this week. And I think Joe did a lot of good stuff in the intermediate part of the field last week. I don't think his strongest stuff was when he was throwing the ball deep in that game. I think that he had a couple of balls that he just flat out missed. One got bailed out by Elijah Moore. It was a pretty good catch, but that's why I worry about it. I'm like, hey, if you start hanging some of those balls against that secondary, I think that there could be a couple turnovers that you can't really come back from. So I'm wondering about, and then in that fourth quarter, he really just did not play within himself at all. So I worry about that kind of a situation. We know we don't have any offense. If the Browns can't run the ball, then they're left in a lot of third and long situations. Then that offense is going to look pretty bad because we're a 5-yard pass kind of offense, right? We're a true old school West Coast where it's like we're going to try to get that ball in stride and get it out quick and hope that David Njoku breaks a couple tackles, but we're not really going to stretch the field down any significant amount. So I think this is actually going to be a good game. The Browns defense tends to show up at home. The Jaguars tend to show up on the road. Sounds like a perfect recipe for another really stressful Sunday for both of us. So
I can't take another one. Sometimes I sit here, I'm like, why am I a fan of football? This sucks.
See, I went through that in 2012. I think it was Colt McCoy. I was watching Colt McCoy, and I want to say Brian Dable was the offensive coordinator with with Eric Mangini, and that offense was so dreadful. It was like Jake Delhomme, Colt McCoy, and then like every once in a while, that was the year they traded Braylon. Well, no, they didn't even have Braylon Edwards. They just had nothing. Like Carlton Mitchell was on the team. It was giving him a run. And it was just, I remember being like, I can do other stuff. Like, I don't need to do this. This does not bring me joy.
Yeah,
But,
well, unfortunately, now we're YouTubers, so now we're like almost locked into it. We can't just do something else if we don't want to watch it. We kind of got to.
I watch the games live. Ain't no getting out of it for me, dog. Yeah,
absolutely not.
Good, bad, and different. I'll be like, I just hope it's not a blowout in the first half, because it's been a while since that's happened where I had to sit for a whole half of football and figure out what I'm gonna talk about when there's nothing to talk about. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully you get something interesting to talk about here. But thank you for coming on. A lot of interesting insight from you. They can find you on YouTube at UCF Jaguars. Is there anywhere else that you want to let people know they can come get you at if they're interested in knowing more about more teams in the NFL?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm on Twitter, Instagram at UCF_Jaguar. We actually started up a couple weeks ago a pretty cool channel called the AFC South Roundtable, where we just kind of talk smack against other, Colts fans, Texans fans, and Titans fans. It's a lot of fun right now because the division is very competitive. The Jaguars, sitting at 8-4, then the Texans and Colts riding our tails at 7-5. So lots of interesting discussions over there. But yeah, you guys can find me pretty easily, kind of all over the place here on YouTube.
Appreciate you, man. I did a little bit for a video. It's going to go up on his channel. So if you want to check that out, make sure you jump over to his channel and check out his perspective of this week. It's always good to get out your own bubble of your team, right? Because sometimes that bubble can be doom and gloom and you get all caught up into it. Then you talk to somebody else and like, we're actually worried about this game too. You're like, oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I forget.
No, and it's funny for us because we're fans of these teams that have just been so historically bad. We would have thought like, oh my God, if my team was 8-4 or 7-5, I would have no worries. Everything would be so awesome. But now we're kind of sitting here and it's like we're not satisfied, man. I feel like we suck right now. But it's like, no, you take a look back and like look at your record. There's plenty of teams, like compare yourselves to the Panthers or the Jets. You're not in that bad of a situation, but yeah, it's there's always different things to worry about, and you want to fight for seeding, you want to fight for your division, and the Jaguars
games that you could have won. I mean, oh, we should be this, right?
I mean, the Jaguars on Monday, if they won, they'd have the number 1 seed, and then they lost, and now we're at the number 4 seed. So it's like, man, these games are so important down the stretch. You really you got to win them all, man. Unfortunately, it feels like.
It's sweaty palms time of the season. Season really starts right now. But yeah, it is interesting, like the perspective that changes. Because you think like when your team is winning 4 games, you think, man, if we could just win 8, that'd solve everything. Then your team wins 8 games and you realize them people winning 8 games just as unhappy as them people winning 4 games. Yeah. And you know what? Them people winning 12 games, not much happier, right? Yeah. Like it's crazy, kind of, man. It's always kind of a similar experience where it's like there's always stuff that you want more out of, right? The bar always changes. Then when you win a Super Bowl, I would imagine you want to win another one, and then you want to win another one, and then you want to become a dynasty, and then you want to maintain the dynasty, then you want to reboot the dynasty, and it's just there's always more to chase. There's always something to get you, and I'm pretty sure Jaguar fans have said this lie to you as Browns fans have. Remember when your team stunk and they was like, "Hey man, all I want is the team to be 500." Yeah. I just wanted to be respectable on Sundays.
Man, it's crazy. It's crazy right now because when was the last time the Jaguars and Browns had played each other with winning records in like December? Oh my God.
Bottlegate might have been the last time?
What's that?
Was it Bottlegate?
Maybe. Man, it probably was back then.
It had to be back in the Central days, right? Because the last time we played the Jaguars and the Browns were decent was 2020. I don't know where you guys. That was the year you guys got Trevor Lawrence, though.
Yeah,
right?
That was the year we got Trevor Lawrence. We beat y'all in 2017 when you guys went 0-16, and we were on our way to the playoffs. So it was outside of 2017, we've been in 2022. We've been terrible for the last like 15 years. We had a couple years in 2006 and 2007 where we had a couple of wild card bursts, but it's been
and I don't think we played the Jaguars in 07. No, we didn't. We didn't play the Jaguars in 07. Browns were good. Yeah, I think it's legitimately been since the Browns and Jaguars were in the same division in 2000 and what? Well, it was 2002? Yeah. Bottlegate?
Maybe, yeah. Probably way back then, man. It's been, golly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, different world now. So we'll see. But thank you for coming on, man. Appreciate you coming on. Really fun experience. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.